Hello, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Be My Guest with me, Rory Smith. Good to have you along with me today. Now, my guest today is a princess, a real life princess. She's called Princess Olga Romanoff. And I first came across Princess Olga a few months ago. I was watching TV at home and I was watching a show called Keeping Up with the Aristocrats, and Princess Olga featured in this. And I thought, she is brilliant. Fantastic personality. And I always thought, God, I'd love to meet her someday. And when I was booking guests for Be My Guest, I said, what about Princess Olga? So I put in a call to her agent, not thinking that I would hear anything back because she's a real life princess. But the agent got back to me and said that Princess Olga would be very interested in an interview on Be My Guest. And not only that, but Princess Olga has invited you to her home, which is called Provender House, for tea. Now, when a princess invites you for tea, you don't say no. And she lives in the same county as me. We both live in Kent. She lives about half an hour away. So of course the answer was yes. I wasn't going to turn down a princess, that's for sure. So I went to her home and we sat in her kitchen for about an hour, roughly, maybe just over an hour. And I had tea and I had biscuits with a princess. All right, so we are recording.
I have a cough, but not a disease, if that makes sense. So if I start to cough, can you cut it off?
Oh, that's fine. Or we can leave it in.
It depends.
Do you know what?
How badly I cough.
I think you're the type of person that I want to leave everything in.
Oh dear.
All of the language.
Jolly good thing that you can't see me as well.
Why is that? You look lovely.
No, I never dress. I hate dressing up. And Georgie's always saying when we used to go to all these balls in London, she'd say, darling, I'm going to lend you a tiara. She has 5.
Right.
I said, no, I'm not wearing the bloody thing. It's uncomfortable. Not doing it. She said, but it's etiquette-wise, if the guest of honour, me, doesn't wear a tiara, other people aren't supposed to do so.
Do you have tiaras?
No, of course I don't. My mother sold them years ago.
So you how many gowns do you own?
Guns?
Gowns.
Gowns.
That's the Northern Irish accent coming in, isn't it?
I was looking at my gun licence the other day, thinking, shit, would you buy a second-hand car from this woman? Looks scary. I didn't even get the gun in the end. I shoot. Used to. Gowns, not many. Probably 4 or 5, and I rotate them. The thing is, since all that kicked off before COVID, when I was very thin, now, for some reason, my tits have taken off. And my mother would say, darling, you've got a dowager's bosom. And the bloody things don't do up.
Taken off in a good way?
Well, I don't know about that. I've always been flat-chested, and suddenly they've gone, boing! Never mind. Okay.
Gives you some shape, doesn't it?
And then, but not the shape I want.
Do you ever dress up?
When I go out and when I have to. If I'm paid, I dress up.
Right. How often do you go out?
This time of the year, very rarely. But, I mean, there are occasions when people, certain groups, they expect the princess to be in a dress and high heels. Kills me. And I have to be gracious, obviously. But no, normally I'm like this. Not often. As little as possible. Most people accept me, I wear jeans and that's that.
Do you hate it when you have to dress up?
I do.
Where do you go to dress up?
Well, it's only when I'm in London. I don't dress up round here. Obviously, if I went to somewhere like Reed's, you know what I mean?
What's Reed's?
It's our only 5-star restaurant in the area. It's in Faversham.
Right.
It's actually for sale. The beautiful Queen Anne House, gardens, and the restaurant.
Yeah.
As you go past towards Macknaid or whatever, from here to Canterbury, say, on the right, there it says Reed's Restaurant with Rooms. And I've always thought it sounds like a knocking shop. Do you know? You rent it for a few hours. That's not the case. They're frightfully respectable. It's just unfortunate wording.
Yeah. But you're much more comfortable like this, are you?
I am.
Yeah.
I've been like this since I was way back. My mother tried to make me wear clothes. I went to finishing school.
Right.
And sadly,
did
in
it
Windsor.
work?
No, of course it didn't. It was Constance Spry and Rosemary Hume. But
Because your mum was quite a glamorous woman, wasn't she?
Mum was glamorous. Mum was a MacDougall, you know.
From Scotland?
Well, I mean, perhaps my great came from Scotland, but they were very much flour millers.
Oh, you related to them?
That was my great grandfather.
Gosh, and that's on your mother's side.
But my mother's father was MacDougall.
But the princess side comes
my
from
father.
your father's.
Yes, but I mean, you know, my mother married my father. He was widowed, had 3 grown-up children, no money. He was a prince, but that was it. And she brought him here to her home.
How was he a prince?
What do you mean, how was he a prince?
Well, tell me, but I know the line, but the listeners don't.
Okay, my grandmother, Ksenia, Grand Duchess Ksenia, was Nicholas II's sister. And my great-grandfather was Alexander III, who was Nicholas and Ksenia's father. And oddly, well, not oddly, my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather were first cousins once removed, so the Romanoff bit is quite strong, because both my grandparents were Romanoffs. My grandfather was the grandson of Nicholas I. My grandmother was the daughter of Alexander III and the great granddaughter of Nicholas I.
How did the family end up in Britain?
Well, my great-grandmother, Maria Dagmar, who was the Dowager Empress at the time of the Revolution, her sister was Queen Alexandra of England. They were Danes. And so George was Nicholas's first cousin.
King George the Fifth.
Yeah. And although he couldn't rescue Nicholas and family, and that we will never know the reasons why not, because I'm told there was I don't know. He was he loved Ksenia, and so Ksenia and her immediate family were allowed over. By this time, my grandparents, Ksenia and Sandro, were happily separated. They were good friends, but they didn't live together. And the government didn't want an influx of Grand Dukes. But they allowed my grandmother to come, and they gave her a grace and favour house, little place called Frogmore Cottage.
No, that sounds familiar.
And even then, they had to do it up. They had to build an extra wing because my grandmother's entourage was so large, and she had grandchildren that she was paying for their education.
Yeah. So if King George V was in your family tree somewhere along the line, that must mean you're somewhere related to the royals now, as in the Windsor. How?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, if my great grandmother Maria Dagmar and the Queen's great grandmother Queen Alexandra were sisters,
right?
And then so that so we're like third cousins. And then through Prince Philip, I'm even closer to them. Not to the Queen, but to the children.
Oh, you said the Queen, the late Queen. The late Queen.
The late Queen. Yes,
yeah,
yes. I adore Camilla, but that's not related to me.
But you would be related to King Charles then?
I am.
Third cousin?
On his father's side, I'm third cousin.
Right. And then you'd be related to William and Harry as well?
Well, yeah, I suppose I would.
Yeah.
William is a dear.
How many times have you met them?
Never.
You've never met them?
I haven't seen the King since I was a party way back, and he's very charming and very nice. My mother always had delusions that I would marry the King.
What do you think of that?
Not a lot. No, I would have gone a long time ago. I have bolter's instinct, and but no. And I always say to people that he had a very lucky escape, because I'd have been worse than anything he could imagine.
Why?
Because I don't like the pomp and the circumstance. I mean, I can't even do it at home. I don't like being in a fishbowl unless I choose to be. I don't particularly like etiquette, and this was way back. Things are so much easier now. No, and he wasn't quite as glamorous as I'd hoped for, if you see what I mean. The sort of, I don't know, Bond types.
The Prince Philip types.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, Prince Philip is was my idea of the perfect man. Tall, blonde, blue-eyed, and a man, and he didn't give a stuff, and he was a great sportsman, and that's the sort of man. I probably wouldn't have lasted there either,
But you would have given it a good go. Then,
I'd have
wouldn't
given
you?
it a good go. Yes.
Because it's funny when we met about 10 minutes ago just outside. The first thing I said to you when you opened the door was, "Hello, Princess Olga," and you said, "Oh, Olga."
Yeah, I've always been just Olga. I mean, obviously, and once upon a time, in my parents' day, and I was with them, going to restaurants in London, they'd be absolutely packed, and there was no seats, but they'd see my father, and they'd say, Prince Andrew, Your Highness, they'd always find a table. Now, if you go into a restaurant, if you ring up and say Princess Olga, they're more likely to say, stuff it. Fuck off.
Really?
Oh, God, yes. Having a title has the reverse effect of what it did have when I was a child. Up until mid-60s, I think a title was useful. I mean, I didn't use it very often, but I am Princess Olga, so, I can't help that.
But what about like on your driving license and passport? Does that actually say Princess?
I got it wrong, and it doesn't say it on either. And Georgie keeps saying, well, next time you get a new passport, you've got to put it.
Georgia, your...
Lady C.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And also the driving licence doesn't just says Olga Romanoff, it doesn't have Miss, Ms, whatever.
Why did you take Princess off it or not put it on at all?
I didn't even think about it. I don't know. I think travelling is perhaps easier just to be Olga Romanoff without the princess. It wouldn't have done much good.
So you never use Princess if you were booking a table or booking an hotel?
Well, now, yes, I do. I do say, because people know me as Princess Olga, and it's easier to say if I'm booking a table locally, I don't have to. I just say, it's Olga.
Well, that's because they know you, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Would you do it on like if you're booking an hotel abroad, to get an upgrade, would you use the Princess?
You don't get an upgrade because if you're using Princess, I can promise you that.
Your house.
Tell me about it.
Well, the house has been in my mother's family. I'm the 4th generation, and my daughter will be the 5th, God willing. And because it's been in our family for so long, my father and I always thought my mother loved the house more than she loved us because it was her passion, as was also my grandmother's passion. And it has an amazing history. I mean, it was built in 1246 by Sir John de Provender. There's a clue in the name. And all the people at that time, for the first 400 years, worked for the king of the moment, and their payoff was land and money. So John de Provender bought the land and built the house. So the centre part is 13th century. Unfortunately, although my grandmother kept it immaculately, and as did my mother until about the late 70s, when the money ran out, but I didn't realise that. And then things deteriorated terribly. When she died, I got an architect called Ptolemy Dean, who is very famous, architect, historian, does old houses, and he is also the architect for Westminster Abbey, but that was since I've known him. Anyway, he is a restoration architect, and I loved Ptolemy. So Ptolemy and his team took over Provender, and English Heritage gave me grants, but it was matching finance. So every time they gave me 100 grand, I'd have to go off and sell something. Because I didn't have the actual cash. So that kind of worked. And the idea was, as I said, was to do weddings and make the thing pay for itself. But to pay for itself, I would had to have earned 3 grand a month for the upkeep. Now, because I was younger and confident that, this is going to be easy, it bloody wasn't. And it didn't work. So although we did the original restoration, we now need to maintain what we've got.
But that's the thing a lot of people will find difficult to get their heads around, because when they hear princess, they go, bottomless pit of money, loaded, minted, family heirlooms, all the rest of it. But you said in the 70s when the money run out, literally run out?
My mother was doing it all on debts, about bank loans. But I didn't know this until, I suppose, late 70s, early 80s.
Because what would have been the income then?
Bugger all, because she didn't have any income. She did it off, the money that she'd got. She did used to sell stuff. Not the Russian things like I did, which my father gave me, but she would sell furniture. And so she also, have you seen Downton Abbey? The way the Dowager talks? Okay, so Mother had that sort of idea. I mean, she had no money, but there was a shop on wheels would come once a week. And because she knew the people and she wanted to keep up a standard, she kept buying this dog food. And I opened the cupboard when I came down and I said, Mum, you don't even have a fucking dog. It was filled with cans and Winalot. Oh, she said, yes, but I don't want them to know I don't have any money. Oh, well, for God's sake. Because it was
Keeping
to
up
keep up the
appearances.
standard.
Yeah, of
Absolutely,
course.
is what
Yeah.
they were saying when they were about to go bust at Downton. It's you didn't let people know
No.
that you didn't have money.
Stiff upper lip.
So the whole thing about Provender and the princess. I mean, my mother lived here as a child, and when she was plain Miss McDougal, but she always had an aura, and she was always called Miss McDougal. I was the princess, and I was always called Olga from birth by all the farm people and everybody.
So when you took over Provender House, that was 2000,
Yeah.
after the death of your mother.
Yep.
How many rooms was there then?
Well, the same amount there is now. There's about 29 rooms. Oh, I think there might have been a few more because I think Ptolemy knocked a couple together. With the attics, of course, and I live in the attic, which was the box rooms, what kept all the storage and everything. 2 servants' rooms knocked into one. There was the servants' block, which is now Airbnb.
What state was it in then?
Well, in 2000, it was really bad. I mean, Ma was 92 when she died, but she was getting slightly, I wouldn't say she had Alzheimer's, but she was definitely off and away with the fairies. And I would drive down from Scotland 2 or 3 times a year with my dog. And I'd say, Mum, those chimneys look really bad. There are bricks missing and they practically wobble in the wind. And she said, oh, rubbish, darling. This house has stood for 750 years. It's absolutely fine. And I'm thinking, yeah, because they did maintenance. So by the time the poor woman died, and the holes in the roof were awful, and the buckets and it was just awful. We had to. All the chimneys were pointed and restored, and there were many chimneys.
Were you working up in Scotland?
No, I've never worked properly. I
never
lived
worked.
in Scotland.
So where did your money come from up in Scotland?
I didn't have any money. Absolutely nothing. I was supported by a friend. I've been on income support. I've been bankrupt. My son died the same year. It was all pretty tough. My children all went to a state school. 2 went to university. Because I had no money and we were in Scotland, they did university free. They had student loans, but that was different. But it was tough. And when my mother died, because I didn't really think I would live here, I came down in the January because she was unwell and was here all the time. And I'd take the dog for a walk in the mornings across our fields. And I would look back and I was thinking, in spring, it's not so bad. Would I like to live here? And then she did die, and then the children said, oh, Mum, you can't get rid of it. Apart from the fact, because it was in such a bad state, it probably wasn't worth any money. And that applies now, of course. And then we started in earnest. And we had no roof for a long time, and it all seemed really exciting. And I had great hopes that this would make shitloads of money, and I'd be okay. But it doesn't work that way.
What stopped you from getting a job?
I never went to school. I had qualifications for Jack. I had 3 small children, and they're all quite close together. So I wanted to be there for them when they came out of school, and I wanted to be for them to get them ready and all that. They told me that they used to get themselves ready, and they made their own breakfast. But But I just had apart from working at the checkout in the local supermarket, I had no qualifications and nobody wanted to employ me.
Did you try to get a job?
I did ask a few people, would you like to employ me? And they'd look at me and they'd say, no, we don't want to employ you.
So when you moved down here, how old were the kids then?
Oh, old. I mean, when I moved down here, Alex was born in 1981, and I moved down here in 2000. So she was just starting university in Edinburgh, and my older son was also just wasn't. How can that work out? One was at RAF Cranwell, one was at university, and one wasn't doing any of those things.
How old was your other son?
The one that
when
died.
He died? Yeah.
He died on my daughter's 8th birthday, so she still cries regardless of age. And he's buried in the village in Scotland, which, if you've got to die, it's a very beautiful churchyard to be in, because it's got the river at the bottom and the hills beyond. And the Scottish cemeteries are so nice because you have the gravestone and maybe about that much earth both sides, and they mow them like war graves, and so it's really nice. And I have a friend that puts flowers on her birthdays, anniversaries and things.
How did he pass?
He was 18 months old when he died. We don't pass, sorry. And
You don't like that word?
awful.
Why?
Pass what? A gallstone, a kidney stone. Died. He died age 18 months he was born with a very rare heart defect, which obviously I didn't know when I was carrying him. The other children popped out Queen Charlotte's very easily. This wee boy was sitting, and they had to give me an emergency C-section, and when they found that his heart was irregular, so within 5 hours of his birth, he was in Edinburgh, sick kids. He'd gone down in an ambulance all the way. Apparently the nurse said he kept his eyes open the whole time, looking with horror because it was very windy, bumpy. And he had a procedure. He came back. When he cried, he was the original blue baby. He was blue from the waist down. So the other parents in Aberdeen Matty Clinic would come and look when he cried because it was bright blue. So we had to keep him healthy until he was 8 months old. So weekly we went to Aberdeen to the sick kids bit where he was monitored. And at the age of 8 months, he had this big operation, which was to take bits. They had to build a baffle on the inside because you're supposed to be born with 4 sections of the heart, but he was born with 3. So the top one, that's why the blood oxygen didn't mix. So when he cried, he went blue. So they had to build something called a baffle, or a mustard, because the man that pioneered this was a man called Dr. Mustard, who was Canadian. And everything seemed fine. He came home and he was okay. Then he got, can't remember whether it was measles or, yes, it was measles. And so he had to go back. And when he was opened up, we knew something was wrong. The surgeon, whose father had been one of the engineers and architects on the Forth Road Bridge, and he always compared bodies to cars. So he said, when I opened him up, he was rusted over. And he was the only child in Britain to reject his own tissue. And died in intensive care on my daughter's birthday.
How did you deal with grief?
Well, I had 3 other children, one of whom, my daughter, took it all very badly. The oldest one was 12. He still can't talk about it, even though he ejected when he was training in the Air Force and saved the pilot's life and blah, blah, blah. He still can't talk about it. Fran, who is very horizontal and is almost alternate, says, you can't think of life like this. You can't think about this. You've got to think of it this way, otherwise it'll drive you mad. But because I had 3 small children and things were very difficult, we all got over it. When we don't get over it, we never forget. And that's how it goes. But you have to move upwards and onwards because there's no choice. You either wallow and die or you move on. You can't stay there, particularly when there are other things you have to deal with.
If I were to ask your 3 kids now what type of mum were you and are you? What would they tell me?
Probably they'd say the elder one, who has children of a good age, 19, 17 and just 13, probably not too bad, but because things were so bad financially and all the rest of it, they seemed to think, particularly my daughter, that I took to the bottle. In actual fact, I didn't, but I did drink a lot, because I can't, forever, I can't get drunk, I throw up. So that was always a good thing when I was young, so no one was going to take advantage of me, because if I drank too much champagne, I'd be back rushing to the loo. So I think it depends on the way they're feeling on the day they would be asked the question.
What would your response be for the same question?
Well, I tried. I do admit that I wasn't natural mother material, and when I had the children, I always thought things would be very different, and I was still with the husband, and this is before the fourth one that died was born. I always, because poor Tommy used to tell me things would be different, and I used to believe him. So I did think, they'd all be going to private schools, and we'd be living in the countryside, and it would all be hunky-dory, and there'd even be people to help. But that didn't really materialise.
So even nowadays, do you have staff?
Don't be ridiculous. Since the Airbnb thing and the fact my daughter's in London, we do have a wonderful cleaner who comes in and she'll do the changeover. So people left on Sunday, but so we won't have her in until the next lot arrive. Then she spends 4 hours in there cleaning it and making the beds. And when I'm very lucky, and particularly during the season, she will come in here, maybe 4 hours a week, every fortnight or something, and do the bits that really need doing.
Who does it the rest of the time?
Me.
You.
That's why it's a shithole at the moment, because it's winter. No one comes in, except for your poor self and friends. No one comes in, and I look at it and I think, stuff it. And the children, the feral ones, play there.
So how did it come around then? Because you moved into the house, you could have sold it, but not made as much money as you would have if you did it up and whatever. So you're thinking, I need to make money here. How did you come up with that?
How did I come up with it? Well, as soon as you get involved with English Heritage, part of their deal is you have to be open 28 days a year to Joe Public. So we set out the days starting in May, and then on the top of that, we have the private tours, which are the ones that make the money. We might have 50 people.
What's the other tours?
Joe Public, i.e., we used to let people come in off the street. Do you know, like, you want to go out and see an old house, you come in.
Yeah.
But I said to English Heritage, because I saw this lovely old lady from a WI group, this is 22 years ago, nick something almost in front of me. I said, but they're not going to free range. I will do the tours. So we do one at 10:30, one at 2 o'clock.
Get you. That's the
but
guided
it's the public.
Tours. Yes.
But then I do guided tours, big private ones, where they have tea. So we might have 50. I have a friend that does downstairs, I do upstairs, and we swap in the middle, and they have tea and cake, homemade cakes from a friend of mine that comes and does it.
How much is that?
Oh shit! No, I can't. I think it's this is just for the entrance. I think it's £16 for old age, and £20 for not people under 60. Is it 65? Under 63, whatever it is, and £6.50 regardless for tea and cake, and they can drink as much tea as they want.
And you've got a few products as well, don't you?
Well, I do have a few things. I mean, my daughter's bought a lot of stuff. And we have, due to the programme we did called Keeping Up with the Aristocrats and my awful swearing, the producer said, we'll make money out of it. So we had tea towels, good quality tea towels, and tote bags and mugs, which I don't think we will sell again, common china. And it says bugger shit fuck on them. It doesn't actually say the whole thing because it has asterisks, which is quite sad, really.
That's boring, isn't it?
It is boring. You can see what it says there.
Well, why that saying?
I don't know. I didn't get them done. I think it was The first one. Why they did it, I don't know. Perhaps they thought it was less offensive. I don't know.
Do you say it? No, I mean, do you say that saying? Is that your saying?
That was what I was saying all the time as we were making the programme. Some of the time, under my breath, but I mean, the producer picked it up all the time. And one time when I got out of dressed up, got out of the car, the Isle of Wight, and it was pissing with rain and the wind was howling. And I hadn't got the right outdoor gear over the top. And I can remember saying as I got out, fuck a shit, fuck. This is unreal.
How do people say? I mean, you've got tourists popping up here. I think they're going to Princess House. They have to
Well,
curtsy.
I don't swear in front of them.
Do you not?
And, unless they're funny. I mean, somebody might swear, because I said something. And no, I mean, I am careful.
Do you swear a lot around the house by yourself?
I do, actually.
Do you?
I do.
It looks like you enjoy it.
My dog and I, my poor dog, who looks at me as if to say, "What's up? What's the matter, mother?" And yeah.
And you mentioned there about the programme Keeping Up with the Aristocrats, which is actually how I first was introduced to you, because I was watching it at home and I was absolutely howling saying I need to meet that woman. But in it, I don't know whether it was your decision or the producer's decision, but you went on a date.
That was
Whose
definitely TV. I wasn't
Was
me.
it?
I said I think it's incredibly tacky. My ex-husband's not dead yet, and he's upstairs, literally dying. And I said I think it's so tacky. And I said, and I would never ever have done that sort of dating. In my life, you meet people at parties or through friends, but you do not do that. So it was a laugh.
The headlines after the show, a lot of them ran with the rebellious princess in the headline.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, I suppose they're quite right, really.
Why?
Well, I mean, because my mother was very, very strict, and the Russian community, because my father was head of the Russian Orthodox Church in exile when his mother died in England, they all thought I would take to drugs, drink, and be in a loony bin by the time I was 25. Well, that didn't happen, but I do have the rebellion.
What makes you rebellious?
Just me. I don't like shit. I don't like to be bullied. I don't like to be told things very often unless I know that I'm wrong. And I just don't give a stuff. My mother was always trying to sort of clean me up or make me sound better.
What do you do in the sort of winter months up until May before the house opens up again for the tours?
Keep my head down, try to keep warm. Dog sleeps on my bed most of the time, big Labrador, because it's so cold, and we go back to back, and he is quite warm. And a hot water bottle or two. And the sitting room I can warm up, but I go out at least once every 10 days with friends to the pub to warm and to get fed. And literally keeping my head down. I go to London a few times. It's just it's a way of life, which I don't particularly like, and would love if I could make the money to be able to finish the house off, make it warm. I mean, obviously oil is so expensive, it will never really happen. We've got all these wood burners and things. And so I could be able to go away more often.
On holiday?
Well, I don't know whether you'd like to call it holiday or go to visit relations that I haven't seen for maybe 40 years.
So, 30 plus rooms, we said, in this house.
That was then. I think it's 28 now.
28. You pottering around by yourself in the winter months. Does it get lonely?
No, I've always liked my own company, which is just as well. And I love people, but I love them to go.
Is that a hint, Princess Olga?
Hey, Rory, that's quite different. There's only one of you. But, I mean, I love it when my daughter and the children and her children's father come down, and it's great, particularly in summer, because it's a big garden. They can all go out, and the children can go out, and there's the door playing in the garden and having their bicycles and whatever. In winter, it's quite hard because I like noise on the radio 2. I do not like noise non-stop, and they are very loud. Very funny and lovely and luckily very attractive, because I'm very anal about, thank God that 5 grandchildren are very good looking.
Do you watch telly?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
watch telly, but I don't. Here we have Netflix in the kitchen. I'm not very good at programming the thing or getting it, and I'm into something called Schicht Creek at the moment.
Oh yes, yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
And friends of my daughter said, "Oh, that woman is your mother." Otherwise, I watch telly upstairs and generally old channels because I think.
Do you? What's your favourite programmes?
I don't know. I like things like Midsummer Murders, Vera. Recently at 7:00, I'm watching Knight Rider, and when you look at these things, you think, Christ, it's so old-fashioned. But he did have good legs and a good arse. He has legs that go. I mean, he's quite attractive. Even though now he's really old. Mud.
Speaking of telly, I read recently that apparently you're in touch for Big Brother.
Yes, they don't want me.
They don't want you.
Nope, they don't want
Why?
me. I don't know. I think they said to my agent, "Thank you so much, but this year we don't want her." Well, they've never wanted.
Would you have done it?
Yeah.
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 How would you deal with the cameras 24/7
What in the thing with
in the
the
Big Brother
celebrity?
house?
A Big Brother. Oh, I couldn't care less. I mean, they tell me it's not in the bog; it's in the bathroom. So they said you have to wear a swimsuit. So I'm thinking, my mind flips back to I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And Nigel Farage's arse, and he's the only one over the years of watching the bloody thing that actually took his clothes off. Thank God, because the idea of having these disgusting things in your knickers without being able to get them out, I mean, mad. I'm mad. He was really sensible.
Would you do the jungle?
Yeah, I'd love to do the jungle.
Would you?
Yes.
I think you'd be great
Be a
at
challenge.
that. Yeah.
But the longer they leave it, the older I'm going to become and the more feeble I'm going to become.
Have they ever approached you?
Yes, they did approach me some years ago, the year that they picked Lady C, Georgie Campbell, but neither of us knew we were both being courted at the same time. I mean, they came down here 2 or 3 times to interview me. But, no, I didn't get it. And they haven't wanted me since.
So the whole thing, being a princess, taking on the house, do you see it all as a privilege or a burden?
Bit of both. I mean, the fact that the house has so much history itself. I mean, Jane Austen's favourite niece, Fanny Knight from Godmersham, married the man that became the first Lord Brabourne, and they lived here. The Brabournes, the same family had the house for 400 years, but the name changed. Anyhow, they lived here. It has a lot of history, apart from the more recent history of my mother marrying my father. And it is a privilege because of the ancientness. We have lots of ghosts. I won't have that ghost program here. They're allowed to rest in peace or come out when they wish to. They sometimes tweak the odd group. People will say to me, "Do you have ghosts, dear?" And I will say, "Why?" And they'll say, "There's something very strange down there." I'll say, "Oh, really?"
Are you not bothered by the ghosts?
No, not at all. I threatened them when my mother died. Ghosts like continuity. They like the same family, do you know? And they do, other people see or feel, but they have been very good to us. I mean, my mother would hear them at night in the drawing room, pulling furniture across the parquet floor. Parquet's not there anymore, it's oak. You know, and we had bells that would ring. No one was there, and all sorts of things. And I had a friend called Clarissa Dixon Wright, who was one half of Two Fat Ladies.
Oh yes.
Now, she was a very well documented ex-alcoholic. Well, as she said, you're never an ex, you're a recovering. So at the height of her alcoholism, must have been 83. She would come down and with weekends with my husband and the 3 small children, but my mother wouldn't have her in the house because she said there wasn't room and she couldn't put up with the drinking. So my mother would bribe the farm manager or the trustee, and she'd give them a bottle of gin and say, "Give this to Clarissa." So the first time we came down, my mother was cooking. She was making mayonnaise in this kitchen by hand and cooking, I think it was salmon. And Clary was given a bottle of gin and a glass and told to wander. I think my husband and I were putting the children to bed and bathing them and all that. So Clary wandered, and she came back at one point and she said, I've just seen the most beautiful woman in the drawing room wearing the most incredible hat with a feather. And she trotted off. And then she came back a few minutes, well, about an hour, half an hour later, and she said, and I've just seen her husband, the Cavalier, bending over the banisters at the top of the stairs. Now, we know they're there. Now, my mother, poor woman, who did live alone and didn't quite like the idea that all these ghosts, because she pretended, she said, oh, it's the gin talking, it's the gin. And Clary had very, very pale blue eyes, the fey eyes, as they say. And years later, when she was a dried out, recovering alcoholic, and I used to stay with her in Inveresk on my way down from Banchory to here, and she was lovely, ex-alcoholic, because she would always have a half a bottle of champagne in the fridge for me, and she didn't mind people drinking in front of her. Anyhow, she'd say, you know, Olga, I did see those ghosts. It wasn't the gin talking. And I said, I know, Clary.
Just to clarify it.
I know.
Would you ever sell the house?
Well, as my daughter points out, had I wanted to sell it, I should have done it 10 years ago. Now, this sort of house, remembering she's an estate agent, is worth very little. Not enough to maintain, be able to pay my daughter back for the money she's put in it, and to be able to, for myself, to be able to live even vaguely comfortably before I die.
So it's not an option?
It's not really an option, because all the very valuable things that I had, I sold to match English heritage, and although there are still things left which are in the bank, none of this stuff has great value nowadays. And don't know what I'm going to do in my old age, but I don't want to be rattling round here on my own. Actually, I don't mind the own bit. I just don't want to be rattling round here.
How do you want to be remembered?
She was, I don't know, eccentric. She was different. She's one of a kind. I'm loyal to my friends. I will always help anyone that asks me to, not financially, obviously. But I'm always there for friends, and I will always be as helpful as possible. And I can be a good laugh. Mm-hmm.
Indeed you are. You made me laugh today, that's for certain. And in to use one of your own words in the tea towel, that interview was the bollocks.
It was bugger shit no bollocks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rory. That was fun.
Lovely. Thank you.
And that was quite good.
Yeah.
So how much of that are you going to cut out?
Probably all of it. No.